All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Me here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. Um, Doing the RMO TMZ style, talking about Valerie Bertinelli. You know, I did a video about this, and when I saw this topic pop up, and my video had a lot of views, and I did the video because I just felt that Valerie's name popping up so much in light of what Ed's actual widow went through the last year and a half, losing like 5 people who were close to her. And I'm not saying Valerie Bertinelli can't grieve for her ex husband. See, it's just weird because when you think of divorce, and I'm sure many people who watch these videos have been divorced, and they may have some feelings or some good memories that are attached to their prior marriage. Not sure it's at the level of grief. They may feel sorry if that person passes away. Um, I don't know. I know they were married for what, like 26 years, which is a really long time, but they got divorced because they weren't getting along. And Ed and Valerie decided it was better for Wolfie that they got divorced. But Valerie Bertinelli, she's done like the Today Show, and I think she did something on the Food Network. And this just comes up two girls dishing about any topic. And then, the Eddie Van Halen grieving thing comes up. And she says that she's been grief shamed. Now, I'm not shaming her for her grief. I just find it kind of weird. Because, look, if he was really this important, then, you guys probably could have gone to counseling and tried to work it out. Now, in any situation, sometimes there are irreconcilable differences. Sometimes, not always. In a marriage, it's very common, and it has been fairly common now for about the last half century, that people get divorced, at least the last, say, 40 years. Just as many marriages end in divorce as marriages that stay together. So, it's weird that grief shame is something that people are saying about Valerie Bertinelli. I get it. They spent a lot of time together, and obviously they had a son together. Nobody's really getting, frustrated with Wolfgang with supposedly his grieving process. It just, I don't know why. And a couple of patrons here on the channel sent me messages saying, yeah, I was starting to think that too a little bit. I mean, they both remarried. They both got married. See, if one of them, if she hadn't gotten remarried, then you would say to yourself, wow, well, Ed really must have been her true love. But, he got remarried very quickly. Only took a couple of years for him to marry Janie. And Valerie Bertinelli moved on like 4 years later and married somebody by the name of Tom Vitale. Yes, they remained close, meaning that they shared duties as parents and tried to raise Wolfie appropriately. And, but she goes on to say, I miss him and I'm allowed to miss him. Sure. I mean, there are tons of musicians that miss Eddie Van Halen. But she goes on to say that he was a huge part of my life. And, it's weird because then she comes up with this statement, just because we loved each other, that means, I think in the present tense, that didn't lessen the love that he had for Janie or Valerie had for Tom. So it's a different kind of love, she says, and I don't know how to explain it. Neither do I. Neither do I. Um, I guess you can have some feelings, and yes, you can have kind of some residual. I don't want to say love, but maybe. See, this is where it gets a little bit ambiguous, I think is a good word. But this was an interview that she did in January, talking about all this stuff, and you know, to me, I'm perplexed by, I guess, the fact that this is in the news, and now she's upset that people find it a little bit peculiar that this super close bond still existed, and that she uses the L word, which I think if you're the current spouse, even if it's a quote unquote different kind of love, I mean, maybe both sides understand. Maybe Janie is cool. Maybe Tom is cool with it all. I mean, Ed's gone, so they could be cool, but they could also be wondering, like, hey, maybe thinking inside, I would be thinking, hey, this is kind of weird, because I'm competing with this memory, and I can't compete with that. I can't compete with that 26-year run that you guys had. So I think people, maybe if they're super mature, and maybe this is just a great example of everybody in the situation being very mature in light of Eddie's passing, there's no reason to maybe drill down into that relationship thing and wonder, did she ever really love me the way she loved Ed? Or in the case of Janie, did Ed still have all these strong feelings, and was it a competition? Again, in 2 years, Ed had remarried. That would, to me, sort of be indicative of somebody who wants to start fresh with somebody different and possibly put that part of their life behind them. Just just saying, by the actions. Valerie took 4 years longer to do that, but she still did it. And here we are now. But I wasn't trying to grief shame anybody. I guess it's just fascinating. It's like people watching, and different people react differently to different situations. And there's a level of comfort, and then there's a level of curiosity. And this falls under that curiosity. And it is just curious to think that, well, maybe they should have stayed together. Counseling, maybe they should have worked it out. Um, because I don't think you maintain this level of affection or closeness if there wasn't still something really big there. Now, obviously, Ed's not here to give his side of the story, but it would be interesting if we knew that he still had the same level of feelings and affection and goodwill with Valerie. But nobody knows unless somebody was privy to conversations that they, either overheard or personally had with Eddie during his sort of downward trend, health wise. And I'm sure he wasn't really concerned about that. I'm sure he was getting most of his comfort and most of his support from Janie, who really took it super duper hard. But it seems that the focus has been on Valerie. Valerie is a celebrity. She's out on these food shows and the what I call hen talk shows, and it just, at times, it's, I guess, when there's something emotional afoot, it works perfectly for daytime TV, and it certainly keeps somebody in the news, and it's the question, sort of getting the dirt on the situation, and I think that's what this whole thing might be about. But as far as the memory of Eddie Van Halen, yeah, I mean, that was a cool snapshot for fans of Eddie and of course Valerie Bertinelli, who was in television and so forth, that these two would get together. And like I say, you see photographs of them, old photographs, and you almost think they're brother and sister. I mean, they looked alike. They had like the same hairstyle and some of the same grins and facial structure and so forth. It was really interesting. You know, sometimes they say that married couples can kind of start to look alike after they've been together for a while. But anyway, this is a question that came up. And also, it's interesting because I did a video on this a few weeks ago and it was really watched. I mean, I was shocked at how many people actually watched that video. And I'm wondering if some of that got out there, you know, hey, there's this guy who's like grief shaming you. And I'm not grief shaming anybody. You can grieve. Fans are still grieving. Rock star Steve Lukather the other day on with Rick Beato talking about Eddie or talking about all the musician friends that he's lost and so forth. There are a lot of people that are grieving. So I don't know. It's not grief shaming. It's just like a little bit weird. I guess I'm not saying it's shameful to grieve. I'm not trying to call her out on her grieving. It just, again, based on divorce and relationships that end, typically you would maybe have I don't know, but just like a speech where you would say something like, you know, we had a lot of great times together. You know, he was a great father to Wolfgang and definitely going to miss him. And that's it. When you put the L word in there, to me, that's interesting. It's definitely interesting. So anyway, that's my video. I'm kind of dragging on here. I'm not Dr. Phil, and I do not plan on being Dr. Phil. That might be a good question for Dr. Phil. Is it appropriate for an ex-wife to grieve in a way that might seem a little bit creepy? That's the question. And again, I'm trying to say I'm not grief shaming. This might sound like it, but be a better question for, you know, Dr. Phil or whoever handles that kind of stuff.